So, staying on the theme of training and how we acquire skills and how we teach one another, um, I know there are some of you in the room that have been on an ATAC course, some of you that have heard of it, and some of you that won't have heard of it. Now, my experience, I've never been on an ATAC course, but many of my trainees have been on them. Many of my trainees want to go on them, and it seems to bring some sort of religious conversion in them. Now, I know we were saying that we miss Ollie. I shouldn't talk about cults and things, so I won't. But ATAC seems to have a massive reach, and there's usually a good reason for these sort of things because from the little exposure that I have had from people that have been on ATAC and the people that teach on ATAC, is the educational ethos behind the course is fantastic, and that's what drives people to find something new and different in education. So they've been running for 25 years now, and they're based in the north of England and the East Midlands. And the two speakers that we have now are going to co-present the remainder of the session. So there's Mark Forrest and Haldane Hutch Baisley, if I said it right. And Mark is an ICU and anaesthetic consultant in Merseyside and Cheshire. He also is a HEMS doctor at Links and Notts Air Ambulance, where my former colleague Gareth now works. And he's medical director of ATAC and also of the Cheshire Fire and Rescue Service. Hutch is an ITU doctor in Manchester and also works on HEMS in East Anglia, and he's the deputy medical director for ATAC. And I think what they're going to talk to you about, I believe, is experiential learning and kind of looking at what's behind the curtain. Because I've seen the magic of Oz, of people coming back and saying that this is an amazing yellow brick road they've been down and amazing things they've seen. But now we're going to hear a little bit about what is behind that curtain.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Okay, we're going to get our steps in today, I think, so we'll do our best. Yeah, okay. We thought about doing something more dance-like, but that was fraught with terror. So thank you very much. We're absolutely delighted here to be speaking to all of you and to be at this conference. It's our kind of conference, and you're certainly our kind of people. ATACC, ATACC, whichever you prefer. Anaesthesia, trauma, and critical care. It's a course, and you might think, well, why just come and talking about a course? Well, hopefully that's what we're going to explain to you.
We've called our lecture Experience Learning, and as John very nicely described for someone who hasn't been, impressive, we like to think that we take the people who come on our course on a bit more of a journey. That journey is what we're going to try to give you a snapshot of now. And what it involves is trying to achieve something deeper than just learning skills and procedures, trying to achieve deep understanding of those skills and procedures, and trying to achieve learning about oneself and one's skills around interacting with others in order to be able to implement those skills and procedures in the most adverse of circumstances. So that's what experience learning means to us in a couple of sentences. And thank you for having us to hopefully explain that in a bit more detail now.
You set the bar high there. Let's not disappoint. Okay, so many moons ago, I was a very excited ATLS instructor, and I was out there teaching ATLS, and for a while I really enjoyed it, but that was a long time ago, and quite quickly I started to get frustrated. We're in the UK. It was very Americanized. It was very surgically biased at the time. It was also quite out of date and not really, as I'm sure most of you would agree, advanced. And so I was inspired to do something more, and then I was pushed to do something more by our Mersey School of Anaesthesia. They asked for a new course that we could just start. And at the time, a long time ago, back in 1998, it didn't look that different to ATLS on paper. It was small. There was only 12 candidates. There was actually 6 faculty. Most of them were anaesthetists, but we're very multidisciplinary, and we've always been multidisciplinary. And it started small. It just started largely in-hospital based, and the pre-hospital was more about theories. But we were up to date as we possibly could be. And that's where we wanted to start, and that's where we wanted to continue. And finally, the only pre-hospital bit we really did, we went and spent an afternoon at one of the local fire stations and stood in the cold and watched them cut up a car. And that was it, really.
25 years later, some things have stayed the same, many things have evolved. The course is now a huge machine. We run at least 4 of them per year. We take 56 candidates on each course with about 30 instructors and a large operational support team of between 8 and 10 people. Everything that the teams do is hands-on, interactive. There's no standing and watching. There's no indoor classrooms. There's very little kind of tutorials and things like that. And you'll hear more about our education and learning methods later on. John described very nicely the reach that ATACC has, and we're really honoured to have achieved that degree of reach. We look at our I shouldn't really call them candidates, delegates perhaps is a better word, attendees. We look at the list and we are absolutely dumbfounded by the quality of people that choose to come and attend our training. They wait sometimes 2 or 3 years for a place. They travel from all over the world. We've had candidates from every continent, well, none from Antarctica yet, every other continent, and it's absolutely jaw-dropping the effort and enthusiasm people apply to come and learn with us. So that's a taste of the evolution that the last 25 years has brought. Some recent developments: we were accredited by the Royal College of Surgeons London as a fully Royal College accredited education centre, and the ATACC Group is our parent group that it's headquartered in the northwest of England, and that is the umbrella organisation that runs a large number of other courses too and powers the ATACC course.
So in terms of other courses, we've had many approaches from primarily emergency services and other industries. And quite quickly we grew downwards rather than upwards. And we grew right down to a first aid level. We have our own way of teaching first aid and delivering first aid. Then we have emergency services courses, our BTAC, our ATACC, and we go all the way through to ATACC in our integrated emergency care program. And you can run seamlessly through that, and they look very similar in their delivery, but obviously similar methods, but obviously the content is ultimately more advanced as we move through. For those who want more, we've got the diploma and the fellowship. I'll come back onto that later. But we've also got spin-off courses. We've got a police firearms tactical version of ATACC, D13. We've got our NTACC course, which is a dedicated nurse trauma course written by our nurses for our nurses. And that's growing increasingly popular for many UK major trauma centres and TUs. And then we've got an ATACC HEMS course. It's much longer than the normal ATACC course, and we tend to do it bespoke for individual HEMS organisations. In addition to that, many other courses with the Intensive Care Society, we developed SimCrit, which is ICU simulation courses. We've got our critical care transfer courses, our extrication courses, and our ATA series, our Educator, Simulator, and Resuscitator, which is what we're going to do a bit of this afternoon. So you can see many different courses. And of all those courses, everyone starts going, well, where's all the money go? Well, I wish I had a yacht. I wish I lived on an island, but I don't. The police courses and the fire courses, we have a team that teach those, and they have to be paid. They're an instructor pool that work for us all the time. But ATACC is the most important one for me. From day one, ATACC was not going to be about profit. Every single penny we generate through ATACC goes back into ATACC. No one gets paid to teach it. No one gets paid to direct it. We just turn up, we deliver, and the funds we generate go straight back into the course, which allows us to do some of the crazy things that we do.
We love this picture. This picture features on the opening introduction that Mark, Jason, and I deliver for every ATACC course, and we think it symbolises us. There are our shoes on the right-hand side as we sort of trot off to the right of the rest of the herd without our shoes on. We think it shows us trying to do something a bit different, trying to innovate, try to sow seeds, try to grow change. And one of those changes we summarise in the sort of course strapline, if you like, that we wear on our uniform, which is roadside to critical care. That's a phrase that we've used, well, before my time, since the 90s. I wasn't involved in ATACC in the 90s. That'll surprise you, won't it?
Still at school, I think.
Oh, probably not. Yeah. Not even. Sorry. Roadside to critical care is a summation of that departure from the herd and a nice summary of how we try to introduce challenging and alternative concepts. It means that what we do doesn't respect some traditional boundaries and some traditional hurdles, and it acknowledges that patients require sometimes some deviation and some adaptation to what we are routinely taught. Things that we've heard throughout the last morning and yesterday. And this phrase that we wear on one of our other uniforms, we have many, embodies what we try to do. We try to be positively disruptive. We try to challenge the status quo, reinvent, reinvigorate, reinfuse, and find alternative ways and approaches to understand things and deliver care.
And something that we've been hearing over the last few days, really, more and more, is that it's sort of captured in this quote from back in 2005, and I liked it because it's what we're all about. It's about getting the right people with the right equipment and the right skills to the patient, and then moving that patient in a stable fashion to the right location. And yeah, this says it all for me. And one of the key things it says, though, as well, is in the old terms, we used to use stay and play. The golden hour we now know is a myth. As we heard yesterday, it's a window of opportunity. And for some patients, it might be minutes, not an hour. But it was a good concept in terms of time and that clock ticking for every patient. And something we drill home in ATACC as we move through the course is, can we move? Can we move now? Or do we have to wait? Do we have to do something before we move? But if we can go, let's go. Can we do it on the way? And where are we going? And how quickly can we get there? Which is the most appropriate route? That whole, all the time, do we still need to be here? Or should we be somewhere else?
So that's a bit of a introduction, if you like, to our ethos and what we set out to achieve with the ATACC group and the ATACC course. The next little section, I thought we would describe a bit about what our course is like. Some of you will have seen some of these things on social media. Some of you will have been to our course and experienced these for yourself. So the next bit's descriptive. It's what do we do? The first thing we have is an amazing team represented here in Lego. One of our instructors made this picture. There's a matching picture of one of our faculties in front of that exact setup, and he's copied each individual instructor in their uniforms. We love this because it represents the totally multidisciplinary approach of our faculty. Look across look across that photograph there. You'll see police officer, specialist rescue, firefighter, ambulance service, HEMS, healthcare senior management, fire service, military, hospital clinicians, you name it. We've probably got someone who is expert in one of those fields on one of our faculties. We're truly multidisciplinary, and so are our teams who come and join us. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, a really big operational support crew. The amount of gear you're about to see explains why. This is our storeroom for the ATACC course. It's headquartered in the northwest of England. We turn up now with 3 7.5-ton vans, and it's still full. We're about to upgrade to a sort of big lorry, aren't we? The ops support crew are absolutely essential in making this happen, and that's a lesson hard learned. We have probably tried to wing that a bit too much in the past by just getting instructors to run around and sort things out on the sly. We couldn't do it without the ops support crew. We have at least 8 of them on each course. The machine behind the course is quite something to behold.
So this is what everyone tends to think of with ATACC. This is what tends to get posted on social media. This is what everyone gets excited about when they see this sort of thing. And this is the kind of sims that we generate. They're large scale, they're very complex. They can be going from the most simple interventions right through to some really, really advanced stuff, the sort of stuff we've been discussing. But what people don't tend to realize is that in reality, about 50% of the course is in hospital. And for many of the faculty, while everyone likes to do the sort of Gucci scenarios outside with all the things you've just seen, we've worked really hard to try and make our in-hospital ones more exciting and to get more interventional and to let people actually do procedures and get far more involved and engrossed. And that, again, is something we're going to explain a little bit more as we go through now.
We can't do that without a hospital, and we don't teach in a hospital. We teach on a fire service training centre, so we have to construct a little hospital, and here's one of our resus bays. We create a small resus room of 3 bays. Each bay has a proper ED trolley. On the left-hand side, you can see the airway trolley. On the right-hand side, you can see the resus room trolley with breathing, circulation, vascular access, that kind of stuff. Monitoring on the top, and then all the other equipment that you'd expect to have in a resus room. Surgical procedures trolley, drug cabinet that contains all pre-filled syringes of critical care medications, infusions at the bottom, cardiac arrest medications, Penthrox, hypertonic saline, you name it. We try to simulate that environment as accurately as we possibly can. And it's essential to get the enthusiasm and the detail there for our hospital work just as much for our in-hospital work. We found through doing that our predominantly hospital clinicians learn a huge amount in the pre-hospital environment, and our predominantly pre-hospital clinicians learn a massive amount from being outside of their comfort zone in a fairly accurate representation of a hospital resus room.
So I hope as we move through this, you're all going to get something to take away to your education. And one thing we thought for a long time is, oh, do we want to get rid of lectures? Why don't we just put stuff as pre-learning or put some podcasts out? And yeah, we can do that, but that's sort of what everybody does. But we came to realize that if we're going to set these really complex things up, it takes time. And so we use the lecture time to do that. If you come on our course, you will not find a faculty room full of people chatting and drinking coffee. The faculty are exhausted by the end of the course because the stuff they generate, the scenarios they generate, take time and effort to create. In terms of our lectures, though, we are very much TED style. You know, it's not death by PowerPoint. They're usually 20 minutes, 25 minutes. We work really hard to make the sessions as interactive and as educational and certainly as up-to-date as possible. And there is no death by PowerPoint. And I'd like to think that most of our lectures could put on a stage like this and would entertain the crowd. In terms of lecture theatre, part of the way we do that is we work hard on AV. We have a team that, particularly Jason and Halden, who are a bit obsessive about it. And you notice there, that's the view you see from the stage. There's nothing much like here. You just stand on a platform and you've got the 3 monitors. You've got the current slide, the next slide, and any notes that you may wish to have. And that allows us to present in a way that we've been seeing over the last 2 days.
This is a picture from the back of the lecture hall that we set up in essentially a big fire engine garage. It's a garage you can fit 3 fire engines in, and we turn it into this. You can see the coloured rows, and we'll come back to what those coloured rows represent. You can see our screens and our backdrop, and this looks like it's set up for a sort of bar mitzvah, doesn't it, or a wedding. This was from a fire service graduation ceremony. So it's all very nice and immaculate and beautiful, and a very nice clean red carpet. This is more you and us, I like to think, with kit strewn everywhere and people who have been coming and going during a busy day. Our lectures, Mark mentioned, we try to keep up to the minute. This is us, usually me, the night before an ATACC course with all the latest papers, trying to integrate them into any lecture I may or may not be giving. It's really important for us to do that. Every lecture gets refreshed and almost entirely rewritten for every course. That's a lot of work, and sometimes I curse us for deciding to do that, but it keeps the course totally relevant, totally up to date, totally cutting edge.
One of our biggest frustrations, though, is when we see the algorithms that appear. We've all got them in our resus rooms. We've got them in the anaesthetic room walls. And I don't know why we put them there, because, are we supposed to turn to them when it's really an emergency, when we've just failed to intubate and you turn to the latest international guideline or standard? And it's so complex. Who in their right mind? And I love to throw it into our simulations in the hospital when we're doing SimCrit and thing. I'll just hand them the latest algorithm, which is fantastic and a great piece of work by people. But the last thing in the world you want when the adrenaline is pumping and you've got the gloves of panic on. And so we like to keep our algorithms nice and simple as we can. And this is our emergency airway one. And you can see on it, we start with an initial plan. We have a bailout plan, and then we have an emergency plan. And it's color-coded as well. And surprisingly enough, the color coding matches the airway trolley. It also matches the shadow mat. It also matches our intubation roll. So it all fits together. So if you're so panicked that you cannot remember what you do for a bailout, you go to the relevant yellow, amber colored section. Or if it's now an emergency, you go straight to the red. And that's where you'll find your answers. And it's simple and it's easy to follow.
So that's a nice example of how we try to integrate latest evidence and latest national international guidance into really simple tools that form a shared method of people to use on the course and hopefully take away to their clinical practice. Here's another. Some of you may have seen Samurai Laser in the bar last night. This is how we've amalgamated all of the national and international publications and guidance on vehicle extrication. Complex. It's complex. The evidence is complex. And difficult to interpret and difficult to translate across systems. Samurai Laser is 2 words that forms a common language across our attendees from every country, from pre-hospital, from fire and rescue, from in-hospital, to rapidly achieve learning and shared understanding. Another example was built into the last course for the very first time, and this was based on integrating the knowledge from a recent publication from London's Air Ambulance about the sensitivity of their very experienced team at detecting life and limb-threatening injury. If you haven't read that paper, it's fascinating. Simon alluded to it yesterday morning when he spoke about the other paper about identifying major bleeding. It's really interesting, and it gives us great food for thought about how good and reliable our clinical examination plus minus focus augmentation is. I could probably give a long old lecture about alternatives and leave people very confused, or I could summarize it as best as possible at the moment by saying, I think more data is probably the best answer we can get. And here's a simple method that we can try to remember of 4 extra data points to try to acquire more data, to try to make better decisions or think better, like Sarah was talking about this morning.
So some of you in the bar last night was we actually amputated somebody's leg in the bar. For those who missed it, you missed a hell of a show. And the Zermatt team did themselves proud. But that's the sort of thing you can't buy off the shelf, a simulator like that. And one of the things that we realized many, many years ago is we're going to have to build our own simulators because they're just not available. And so we established something we call the lab, and it started as a bit of a joke, and it was in Lee's garage originally. And now it's migrated, and we've now got a whole department at the base where we build these things. We don't buy them, we build them. And we've had to get into all sorts of material science technology, which anyone can do. It's not rocket science, how to mix silicon and how to make different consistencies and colors and things like that. It does take time, though, and time and passion for what you're actually doing. But when it comes to simulators, you've got to think what you're trying to achieve. If your simulator is just to how you sit on a horse for 3 hours on guard duty, well, then this is probably fine. But on the other hand, if you want to learn to gallop across the fields and jump fences and hedges, well, clearly this isn't going to meet what you need. So you've got to think, how complex does this simulator need to be? And we've certainly seen in some places when we've got into things like VR and AR, hugely complex simulators, a bit like METI and those sort of things that are just way past what we actually need. And while we're talking about METI and SimMan and the plastic simulators, we hate them. We absolutely hate them. And you'll hardly see a plastic mannequin on our ATACC course. We like live actors because we can program them, brief them, and they behave exactly as we want them to do. And this is usually what happens to our mannequins. They get taken apart and turned into a skills trainer or a skills simulator. And we've had them all and spent a fortune on them in the past. And now they've gone, long gone. We also don't like those ultra realistic rubber dead people, as we call them, that lie there sort of in this inanimate position. And they're supposed to be an unconscious casualty. And they may have a great airway and you may be able to stick needles in them and do things to them. But as we'll show you later, we can do that to people too. And our people move and breathe and scream and cry and do all sorts of crazy things. So very expensive. I'd just leave them for people to just like playing with rubber dead people. And that's not for us.
So here's a couple of pictures of the simulators that we choose to use. They're real people with real professional artists applying casualty simulation. And if you want to learn more about that, we're doing some practical demonstrations and some explanation in the workshop this lunchtime. As Mark said, live actors can do so much more than even the most high fidelity simulator, whether it's a hyper realistic mannequin or, you know, a very advanced computer controlled mannequin that blinks and cries and things, because there's something about what we do which comes down to human interaction. You just can't apply the real feelings of pressure, stress, fear in training with a mannequin. You can't do it. But with accurate replication, CAS-sim, and all the other things that we do in our simulation, with a real person, you can. The people trying to provide the care form those kind of human interactions that we do in our clinical practice. And that's why we go to so much effort to develop that technology to use live actors in almost all our simulation. So here's 2 examples, and you may think they look great. They don't look perfect to us. The one with the burn, no soot on our t-shirt. Why not? You can't have a burn on your neck and your face without any soot on the t-shirt. Can it smell of burning? If it doesn't smell of burning, why not? When you walk into the ED and there's a big burn in there, you can walk into the resus room and know there's a burns patient in there before you see them. That has to be there. We have to stimulate all the senses to form that human interaction. Here you can see a couple of our wearable technologies in action. The one on the left is a surgical airway being done on a live actor who's been dissociated, in inverted commas, with ketamine. We don't actually give them ketamine, but we brief them as to how they would respond based on how much the... On the right, you can see a wearable simulator on a real person which is fully pressurized and has bilateral femoral vessels, vein and artery, and enables you to deliver Reboa or ECMS on a real person. Yeah, and it genuinely worked. It almost amazed us. We cannulated the patient, got flashback and thought, that's cool. Connected the pipes and blood ran through the oxygenator and back into the skin. It worked really, really well. It did convince Sam. Yeah, it did convince Sam. Not a bad judge. So here's the sort of current list of procedures that we can help teach on a live actor. We can do live actor surgical airway, thoracostomy, hysterotomy with a wearable simulator. We could do transfusion with some wearable cannulas that are connected to some reservoirs. We could do amputation, as some of you saw last night. We can insert a BOA, and we can deliver CPR. So wearable technology on live actor simulation is absolute core of how we deliver our training to promote that human-human interaction, which is core to how we deliver our trauma care. You can have an amazing actor, you can have an amazing scene, you can have an amazing simulation, but the team need to be able to do their amazing care with some amazing equipment too. So if you don't put the effort into the equipment, you just have some shambolic training bag that gets looked at once every 6 months and tipped out because it's full of 5mm syringes and nothing else useful, your training isn't effective enough. So we put a lot of effort, ops support crew do this, bless them. Each team has 3 kit bags, one of the big ones and 2 of the small ones you can see in front, absolutely chock full of gear. We give them proper critical care airway equipment, we give them arterial lines, we give them infusions, we give them pumps, we give them a simulated credo box with blood products in it, we give them a simulated blood warmer, you name it. If you've got that in your critical care service, we want our teams to be able to train with it. And so we have to deliver them excellent and thorough simulation equipment. And alongside that, you have to have monitoring too. We never do critical care cases without monitoring at some point. And so we shouldn't shy away from that. Every team, whenever they're in the pre-hospital situation, has one of our simulated Corpos 3 monitors, and every team in the resus room has full trolley top monitoring, as you would expect in the hospital.
So by doing that and providing the information that the candidates need, you try and avoid the voice of God. If you watch us do a sim, you'll see candidates. Even last night, we saw it with the Zermatt guys. They were saying to us, is he awake? Is he breathing? And all we say is as you see it, or we'll even step back because we'll have programmed the actor, we'll have set the monitor, we'll have prepared the equipment, we'll have set the scene so that every bit of information they need should be there in front of them. If they request a scan, if they request ultrasound sim, we'll provide all of that if we think that is key to achieving the objective. And we'll put all in. We try and avoid the voice of God, as in the talk over their shoulder, as much as we possibly can. And by putting all these elements together, everything from the initial pre-alert they get, whether it's through a telephone, whether it's through a pager message, whether it's through radio comms, they get the initial message, and then we'll build all of these other elements we've been talking into creating the sim. And there's a lot to think about, an awful lot to think about to get your objectives and to achieve what you wish without lots and lots and lots of injects as you're moving through. And one of the things that we get challenged as, okay, we're telling you all this great sim stuff and everything else. Well, we've been challenged. We've been challenged quite hard by several conferences around the world. One of the biggest challenges we had initially was we want to run a sim involving every person in the audience. And we thought, how on earth are we going to do that? So we looked at the program and then we saw a tactical session and we thought, oh yeah, that's got our name on. So we stormed the building and took everybody hostage. We did a similar thing last year where we had an active shooter outside and everyone was told to stay in the building for their safety. Then there was an IED went off. The terrorists came in, took everybody hostage, and then the police came in and rescued everybody, and we went into a tactical medicine session. But there's a lot to think about there, months and months and months of planning to achieve that. Lots of logistics to think about, psychological welfare being a huge one with things like that. Other ones we've done Reboa on stage, we've done ECPR with Samu, all live on stage, taking months and months of planning.
So Mark, here's one of the challenges we received for a conference. Is it possible to do a resus hysterotomy live on stage on a real person and run that simulation from the scene all the way through to hospital?
So this was going to be one of our biggest challenges. And we really did wonder how we were going to do this. And there was a lot to think long and hard about it. And then we thought, no, let's go better than that. What we're going to do, our sim's going to start 6 months before the conference. So it was about a junior doctor that was pregnant and she was going to crash on the way home and sadly end up having a resus hysterotomy by her own team in her own hospital. There was a lot of psychological things the conference wanted to explore. So we said, okay. So we created Jules. We created her on social media. She had a whole family. She had a dog called Ben. She had a husband. We had her scans. And believe it or not, over 25% of the people attending the conference knew her and followed her on social media. Even more than that, when they turned up on the day, just thinking that she was somebody, they didn't even know Jules really. They turned up on the day, she was ushering them to their seats. She served them coffee at lunchtime. She was helping out generally around the session. And then suddenly, when the sim actually started, you could see people we know this person. Why do we know this person? We played a very little clever game with them with all those subliminal inputs. And yeah, it was a really interesting thing to do 6 months before. But then there was the actual scenario itself, and we had to film it in 2 different countries. We had to film it in the UK and over in Australia, where the sim was going to be delivered. We had to film her crash a car, be extricated from the car, resuscitated, transported to hospital, and ultimately by Sydney Hems, and then taken into the resus room, which was actually live on stage. And then live on stage, as a live actor, we're in a wearable, we delivered the baby and resuscitated both mum and baby. Okay. So we pulled it off.
So you've heard a bit now about what we do, how we simulate, and some of the techniques behind how we deliver this type of training. We've only got there, though, through a bit of trial and improvement. And so there have been many ideas that we've had along the way that we've left behind us. And it's only fair to share with you some of those things so you can see how we've developed and got to the point we are now. The first one is these. Courses always had a demonstration in them, and ours was no different. It got quite big, particularly when the course swelled to 56 candidates. And the roller shutters that you can see on the right-hand side would come flying up, and there'd be police vehicles, ambulance vehicles, a fire appliance, a patient there, a critical care team doing an RSI. It's all very impressive, perhaps, and it was quite impactful when you come to a course and you see that on your first morning. But we sat and we thought about it, and we realized that, well, it's impactful and it looks impressive, but we don't bring people here to have things that look impressive. We bring people here to have meaningful experiences and deep learning. Were they learning things? 56 people standing around watching 2 people do an RSI? No. Demonstrations? Gone. Here's another one, an invention from the lab. No sharps training or NST. And that's because we wanted to improve the safety of the course. Not that we'd had any incidents, but we thought it was worth doing anyway, and take all sharps away from any training. So there was no chance of injury to any attendees, in particular to any actors. So we did some material science work. We found this stuff called funky foam. We made these scalpels out of some plastic that would cut through the material. And then the actor and the team were protected from any potential sharps injury. We learned a couple of things. The first thing was, despite best efforts in the lab, we couldn't get it to feel right. And if you're learning procedures, practicing procedures, it needs to feel right. Because if it doesn't feel right, cometh the hour, your training may let you down. Despite best efforts, it never felt quite right. And the second thing is, we realized that we were perhaps doing the attendees, the candidates, a disservice by not allowing them to use sharps under supervision in high stress, high challenging environments in order to be able to use them safely in the real world. NST, gone. And now we have inbuilt Kevlar protection for all of the live actors and closely supervised real sharps use on the course instead.
One of the other things that's gone, and it was a real favourite of mine, we had one of the first immersive spaces. We found a company that used to do it for children with special needs, and they'd never done it for medical. And this was over 10 years ago. And our first one was actually it was a tent that we could back project onto the sides, and we could we could switch the environment in a matter of seconds, put some props in. I'm sure you've all experienced them now and encountered them. This was our 4th generation one. And it got better and better. And I loved, initially there was motion tracking and contact with the wall, and it started to become what I used to call the 21st century classroom. You could sit people in it and teach on all 3 walls. You could run a keynote on one, you can run video on another, you can run 3D for medical and off your iPad and rotate the anatomy on the other wall. It was a phenomenal tool. It took a long time to prepare it for that. And often we use it, this is our ATACC course in there, and often we just use it for them to get a simple algorithm up or a scan up or something like that on the wall. But as time went on, we started to realize we're putting props back in it. It was becoming more and more like a sim center. And for the amount of effort in setting it up, we didn't really feel we were getting much more than just having a big TV there in the corner. So we've moved away from it. And I'm a bit sad about that, but they're costly and they're often not used anywhere near to their full potential by lots of places that are invested in them. And that's really frustrating to see. Another thing, lots of our courses, the lesser courses, and that's not disrespectful, but the first aid courses and some of the emergency service ones, they like a paper manual. They like to have it in their hand. They don't like it electronic. And the ATACC manual went electronic a long, long time ago. It's always been free online. I'll come back and mention that in a second, but it's been free and available for anybody. And it's just been there online for a long, long time. And although they like the paper version, we like to keep moving with the times. Other things we've tried. AR I mentioned earlier on. One of the things we did with AR, there was something called HP Reveal that was available, and we used to run large triage exercises where you'd literally go to the casualty and you'd look with an iPad at their QR code or their logo or whatever else we'd used as a trigger, and it would tell you their physiology. It would tell you what you find, and it was fantastic. And then they took HP Reveal away because presumably someone thought they could sell it or something instead. We've also looked at some of the really high-end VR and AR systems, and they are great, and they're really great to play with, but they just price themselves way out the market. They're crazy, crazy money. You know, we are not made of money, even though we invest everything in the course. And so if these things want to get into medical education, one, they need to be cheaper and more usable, but also you've got to have the tactile elements as well, because you miss a whole lot of the learning experience if you haven't got the feel. And even a Hampton glove and things like that don't really give you that. Something else we tried, we went to a TV studio and we played with some of the latest generation blue screen and green screen where you can actually have an anatomical person or whatever you like stood in front of you or in the palm of your hand. It's like reading the weather. It's quite a challenge to do because everything's the wrong way around and it takes a bit of practice. But again, we watched it and thought, is this for us? No, it's not going to add a lot to our training and our course. Similarly, we've got something that we've still got on the shelf. We've got a metaverse. We created a medical metaverse about 5 years ago. And it's brilliant. You just love walking around it and all the different places you can go. We've got helicopters landing. We've got all sorts of scenery. And it was designed originally for a conference, much like this, where you could wander around the conference and meet other delegates. You could go into sessions and interact with them. And it was great for that, but we wanted to try and use it for online education. Problem comes back to cost. To have it online and live all the time, it's prohibitively expensive. So it's there on the shelf. We're ready to dust it off if if TBS wants to take it on, but we can talk about that maybe later on.
So you've heard a lot now about the lengths we go to and the journey we've been on and the successes and the things that we've left behind to deliver what we hope is high quality training. The next section we wanted to sort of go through with you is, while all that might be fun and impressive and detailed and a bit different, we wanted to explore the reasons underneath why we really go to such detail and attention in delivering training like this. The first reason is an obvious one. We want people that come to us to have a clinically cutting edge experience. We want it to be totally relevant, totally modern, totally up to date, and for them to go away with the absolute latest knowledge, information, skills, techniques, etc. That's obvious.
One thing that wasn't obvious, though, was, but we hinted at earlier on, is how this can be quite a revelation to some people, and how we can not only change people's practice, we can change their mindset, but something that still comes as unbelievable to us. We can change the direction of their career. We can change their whole perspective on their career and their future. And initially, start with a sim. I love this slide. It's my favorite slide from ATACC ever. This is a HEMS consultant when he first sees the casualty he's about to deal with. And it just captures it all for me. I just put that up and say, welcome to ATACC. This is it. Because, yeah, that is exactly. We take people right to the limits of what they can deal with, and then we take them a little bit further. And we build on that. We build on it, and we build on it as we move through.
One of the other things we do is we help people discover their unknown weaknesses, their unknown unknowns. What do they not know about themselves that we can help them learn now, so that when they're in the real life situation, that hidden weakness or unknown isn't lurking there to trip them up. Many of you will have seen Johari Window, and we use the Johari Window to help people reflect on where they are on that cross. And they communicate within the teams to help each other reveal those unknown weaknesses, such that they're aware of them when they're facing challenges in the future. On a similar vein, people have unknown weaknesses, but they also have unknown potential. And so on the other side of the Johari window, we try to help people unlock that hidden potential. We try to deliver a tailored experience for every individual. It's not easy when there's 56 of them, but we do really try to do that so that everyone gets pushed in a way that will benefit them and to an extent that will benefit them. So each individual gets pushed enough and no individual ever gets pushed too much. Should that inadvertently happen, we have support mechanisms in place to deal with that. But the team have become very experienced in stretching people enough to discover those unknown unknowns and to unlock hidden potential.
And some of that is helping people regenerate themselves, really, and reinvigorate themselves. We get it every course. We go on every course, and I'm only 25, and it's been a tough few years. But every time we go, they're all happy. But every time we go to a course, we get reinvigorated. The young guns coming through that are so enthusiastic and are so driven and are so up to date. It keeps me on my toes trying to keep up with them. But that's really, really important to me, especially, and to many of the candidates that come. But trying to put slightly human slant on, this is some of the stuff we never expected. The top one, in my hospital, we've got a really, really good trauma surgeon. And he's an absolute pain in the... His CRM, his communication, everything is a nightmare. So he might be good clinically, but in every other sense, he is a nightmare. He's also a pilot. So you'd like to think that his CRM is pretty good. And he was coming to ATACC. He announced he wanted to come and do ATACC, and we were dreading him coming. And after the course, on the Monday morning after the course, he was in the chief exec's office saying how he'd had this near road to Damascus experience, and he discovered CRM and human factors and interaction, and he ended up talking her into paying for a load of the staff in the hospital to go on a CAA CRM, TRM instructor course so that he could bring proper human factors. And he's a different beast in theatre, a completely different person. We never would have expected that, especially with the way he used to be. We had an ED consultant who came. It was she felt right at the end of her career. She was on the point of retiring. And retiring early and just giving it all up. But she thought, I'll just go on this course just to see what it's like, just see if I've got any interest in this. And we got a beautiful letter back from her afterwards saying we had completely turned her around. She knew she still had it. She'd not lost it. She just needed to dust off her skills, dust off her, her whole approach to things. And she's still back doing emergency medicine now, and probably a better doctor than she was in the first place. And then one that was particularly emotional for all of us. We had an anaesthetist who arrived and told us on the first morning, I'd just like to disclose something. And she doesn't mind us saying this. She said, I've just been diagnosed with autism. She's well into her career. She was a senior anaesthetist. And she said, I have real difficulties interacting with people and difficult situations and communicating. And I'd need you to tell my team, because this is a team I've never met before. I've never worked with, and they might be very intolerant of me, or I'll be intolerant of them. So we briefed the team. We used our mentor to brief the team. At the end of this course, we got another lovely letter from this lady just saying how we'd completely transformed her confidence and a way of dealing with things. And from our point of view, we have an award called the Jeff Roberts Award. Jeff Roberts was a Cheshire coroner, and he loved ATACC. He came and taught on ATACC with us for years, and sadly, he died young a couple of years ago. And we instituted this award. And this award doesn't go to the highest flyer and the best candidate in terms of scores and results. This goes to the candidate that impresses the faculty the most throughout the whole course, in terms of every respect, how they interact with their colleagues, how they help each other, how they lead, how they do trauma, all those different things. And she won the Jeff Roberts Award and was just so totally, totally overwhelmed with it. And so were we. And again, something we just did not expect.
So you've heard how we like to help people develop their performance under pressure, to discover their unknown unknowns, to unlock hidden potential, to address some challenges in their personal and professional lives, to have a restorative experience. And ultimately, we want people to come and leave enthused, invigorated, and have a real sense of togetherness, of a community of people from all different professions, all different countries, all different walks of life and background, but have a really collegiate together feeling, and the teams form that over the time they're with us. We didn't create this. It just sort of happened as the course evolved, and we've looked back and thought, what did we do? All these pictures that you can see here are the teams, and they've done this of their own volition. We didn't say, hey, go off and take like a cool team photo with a helicopter hovering over your left shoulder and one of you standing on everyone else. We didn't do that. We didn't say, oh, go and sit in a wrecked car and have the fire service spray a hose over you like you're having a guard of honor. This just happened. And we think it happened because the teams were having this really powerful collegiate togetherness experience where they felt a sense of purpose, a sense of protection, a sense of belonging, and they were in a situation where they can try things. They can experiment, they can develop, and they can progress.
So, wait, how do we do this? What else could you take away? Well, we've talked about immersive simulation. It's a big part of what we do, and it's got to be truly immersive. If you enter the room and it doesn't feel real, we've already lost you. You have to come in. You've got to feel the adrenaline pumping. You've got to feel the tremor in your hands. You've got to feel the anxiety. But we can't start with that right at the very beginning. We've got to start gently.
So what I want to do now is peel back the surface on what you see about our course on social media, what you might see from our website, what you might see from a video, what you might see from a photo of a Armageddon simulation. You've seen all that now. We've shown you how we use wearable simulators, live actors, props, environment. You've seen that. There's something else about what we do that's created that collegiate, that sense of purpose, that sense of togetherness. And we think these are the things that have achieved that. The first one is this. This is what you see when you arrive. You come to your ATACC registration room and these are in front of you. Everyone's leveled. It's like ATACC Ground Zero. You get your first name, you get your team color, and you get a number, and you get one of these. There's no uniform, there's no seniority, there's no professional grade. You're in a team, and you perform as a team, and you're assessed as a team, and you're looked after as a team. We manage those teams very carefully. We balance them in terms of speciality, professional background, seniority, all sorts of different things. The teams are all sort of equally skilled, but this leveling achieved by team color, team identity. The mentors have even started bringing mascots for their team to take around with them now and have pictures taken in funny places, achieves a huge amount. So we have a real focus on personal and team development. The tool we use for team development is Tuckman's model. Many of you will have seen this. And we tell them on the very first day, you are going to go through this, and you will go through the storming phase, and it will be difficult. And if you're very, very good at your job, your role where you can really add power is to help your team through that storming phase. Because you will have this. You will have these conflicts. You will have these storming phases in your flash teams, in the pre-hospital environment, and the hospital environment. And getting through that storming phase is a key skill that we've managed to unlock now by putting these teams together and using this model presented to them in the lecture hall and then followed up with them on a very regular basis in the mentor meetings. This is a photo of the ATACC crew room. So the teams with the different colors have an individual colored bay in the crew room where they leave their staff, they have their lunch, they have their coffee, and they meet their mentor. You can see a photo there in the middle of the screen. That's Mike Abernathy. He was supposed to be here. He's very sorry he can't. He had 5-vessel cabbage. So he's got a pretty good excuse. He's one of about 9 weeks ago, and he's already back doing HEMS again. Crazy dude. He's one of our very senior instructors, and among a team of other senior instructors, they deliver really detailed and careful mentoring to these teams. They support the individuals, but they support the team on that professional progression journey. And we use Tuckman's model that you just saw and ask the team to rate themselves. Where are we on this? And what can we do to accelerate us through that storming phase and go through norming and performing more quickly?
In terms of doing that, we alter our level of instructor intervention. We start with obviously 100%. It's someone stood giving a lecture. It maybe start to become more interactive, but then we move down through that. We move to a skill station where there may be a demonstration of a skill, then some rehearsal and practice, and then people doing it by themselves. As we move further across and withdraw more instructor input, we move to a masterclass. A masterclass is where we start a scenario, and we get the team rolling, and then we stop the scenario and we teach a core skill, like thoracotomy, for example, or some intervention within the chest to deal with whatever you find when you get in there. And then we move to the next step, which is ISL, instructor supported learning. This is now like having the expert on your shoulder who will basically give you injects as and when you need them as you move through. If you're rolling, we won't intervene. But on the other hand, we may just give you a little inject. We may give the team an inject. We may take a short time out, but we keep the scenario moving forward. And then finally, we move into full immersive simulation where you're on your own until you get the debrief afterwards. And we just let that roll. And this is how we progress through the course and how we build with the teaching. So what about a sim? Well, one of the sims that everybody used to love was the nightclub. We used to love the nightclub. It's absolutely Armageddon as a scenario. You arrive, it's crammed full of people, it's dark, it's just like a thumping nightclub, but it's an illegal event. We don't have security on the door, there's no police, but we push the team to go in. There's people dying inside. You need to go in there. And what we're really looking for here is team safety, staying together, searching the room in a coordinated fashion, looking after your kit, looking after your team, and then finding the casualties and not treating them in there, which is crazy, just extracting them as soon as possible, move, and then managing them outside. But as this went on, it started really well, but then as the years went by, it got louder, it got darker, it got more smoky. We then made it more challenging with extra risk in terms of you might have a drug dealer in there, there may be someone, an assailant still in there. More medicine. We started to introduce someone who's stabbed with a serious, with a traumatic cardiac arrest in the toilet at the back. All sorts of things are going on. More smoke. Don't forget more smoke, to the point where you can't see your hand in front of your face. We'd lost it then. It was great. Everyone loved it. The quote at the bottom from Cliff Reed, he came out saying that was awesome. But did it achieve our objectives? He had his heart rate monitor going and everything when he went in there with Brian Burns. But it was too much. We'd lost it. We were going too far. It was great fun. But this isn't about great fun. It can be, but we can't go too far. It can't be unrealistic. These people are not going to go in there if it's like that. And it's just, we're not going in. Well, there's people that we're not going in. And that's really important we don't lose that. And this is what we think of when we think of a sim. If we lose the fact, if there's no solution, if we don't know what we expect people to do, well, then that's no good. If we completely overwhelm them and overwhelm their senses, and it's just ridiculous, that's no good. If they're totally overwhelmed in terms of the medicine for the team they've got, the equipment they've got, all of these things mean we've failed in the simulation. It's not just about creating Armageddon that just cannot be done. It's about getting the pitch just right. And that takes a lot of thought process. Just to show the sort of thought, this is the very first scenario they do on the very first day. It's a patient who's been stabbed in the leg, massive hemorrhage in a tiny bedsit. And what you see externally, you see a screaming live actor, blood going everywhere. They come in, all they need to do is expose it, tourniquet it, index. And that's what a lot of people would see just watching it. That's not what we see. There's a lot of words on this. I struggle with this. Okay. This is what we see. We see a whole load of other stuff that they've not registered initially at this stage, all about their leadership, their PPE, the environmental factors, the dirty bedsit, the limited access to the casualty, where'd you put your kid, where'd you put it, all in addition to the actual clinical medicine. So at this stage, right at the beginning of the course, it's more about safety and team and a little bit less about the medicine, because all they need is a tourniquet to deal with this one.
And then in contrast, here's how we evolve towards the end of the course. This is one of the final exercises at the end of the final day. It takes place in the resus room. A patient's had an excellent pre-hospital critical care team who have delivered a pre-hospital resuscitative thoracotomy for a chest trauma, a stabbing, and cardiac tamponade. This case is incredibly complex. The patient rearrests as they arrive in the resus bay. They need reopening. They've got a bleeding vessel inside with ongoing massive hemorrhage. They've got cardiogenic shock. They've got traumatic coagulopathy. They've got a staple over one of the coronary arteries, which is causing coronary cardiac ischemia. The patient has VF. They have to internal defibrillation. There's aortic occlusion going on and going off. That's what you see. Underneath all that, on the right-hand side are the challenges that team are dealing with. There are 3 other jobs of similar intensity going on in that resus room. It's really loud and busy. The resources are limited. And those boxes of safety, team, and patient have flexed massively from day one. What we do is we carefully titrate the competence and experience of the team, and we turn it up to 11 towards the end of the course. And ultimately, this is what we're trying to achieve. Steady growth of knowledge, steady growth of skills, and steady growth of behaviors. And if we break those behaviors down, I've put some examples of the types of things that we are trying to enable our people to develop. Mutual support, metacognition, situational awareness, emotional intelligence, leadership followership, communication, restorative practice. All of these things are what we see when you peel back the surface of a very carefully built, carefully titrated simulation in an environment where a team is felt empowered and supported on a developmental journey. This is what's underneath the Armageddon simulation. This tool is absolutely critical to enable that understanding to take place, and it's debriefing. I love this picture. You can see the team with their overalls down and PPE off after a stressful job, having a bit of a regroup, supported by the team of instructors next to them. We've put a lot of effort into this to get it right. It's not easy. There's a lot of evidence out there about quality debriefing, and we've tried to make that into a tool our instructors can use. They all carry this in their pockets. So we've written an ATACC debriefing tool. It goes over several pages. It's fully referenced literature on the debriefing tool, and then it's abridged into this guide that they carry with them. If they want the full tool with the references, they scan the QR code. All the information is there for them. So debriefing, we take it very seriously. We dedicate a huge amount of time to it. It's probably one of our most powerful tools to achieve the things we've been talking about.
So here we are telling you how great we are and all this amazing stuff we do. And that was a big fear of ours on the course. This isn't just about the instructors coming over as we just put our capes on and out we go. We realized about 2 years ago, we needed to do something else. We needed to show them that we are as vulnerable as they are. And to do that, that was really hard. A few of us had to stand on stage and take the lid off the box and get out some demons, some jobs that we'd had that had affected us.
We can't honestly say that we're delivering restorative practice and training people to deal with major trauma without acknowledging these tools and without dealing with the psychological safety aspects. So what you can see there are the two messages of a job that Mark attended and a job that I attended. And we stand up in front of the course and we bear all. We tell them what happened. We tell them how we felt. We tell them what those cases did to us. And we tell them what we did about that thereafter. They're not pretty stories. Those jobs hurt both of us. And we want people to understand that that's okay. The feedback that we've had from that session has been well beyond what we imagined. And I'll take a lovely example from a previous course. A candidate on the first day was finding it all quite difficult. She'd come from another country. She didn't feel very senior. She didn't feel very experienced. Turns out she'd had a really bad case. Her mentor supported her and said, just wait. You'll hear a lecture tomorrow morning. She heard this lecture. We find it quite difficult to deliver, but we believe it's really important. She went to her mentor and she said, I heard what those two said. They've made me feel normal again. They've validated how I feel. I think I can carry on, and I didn't think I was able to before. I don't think we've addressed psychological safety in trauma care. We can put on Armageddon scenarios. We can stress people to the nth degree. We can give them procedures, knowledge, tools, equipment. This is a key part of what we do. It's no good spitting people out with all the skill, all the knowledge, all the procedures, if only they fall off the cliff the next day. So we take the course and we try to build these protective structures around them. We give them tools about what we suggest will help them to get through these challenging situations. Probably the most important thing we do is tell them that we all feel like that. It's okay to do it. And we've got people around us that support us to carry on.
So finally, where do we go next? I mentioned the diploma and the fellowship before. This is one of our biggest achievements that we're really proud of. So if you want to do a diploma or a fellowship from the Royal College of Surgeons, London, in trauma and critical care, you now can. And it's a progression on from ATACC. And, you know, the first examination will take place this year, and we'd love to see some of you come in attending in the future. The manual, my biggest frustration. We have been desperate to we have a new ATACC manual sitting on a hard drive that we would love to share. It's absolutely bang up to date. And that is our commitment. The next version will update all the time. It will never be finished. And we are very close to a platform. The platform has been the problem. It can't be free, but it's going to be as cheap as we possibly can make it. And it will be constantly updated. So watch this space for that. That should be coming this year. And it'll just constantly update. Also, courses. You can't get on a course for 3 years. That's no good. Well, what can we do about it? We've put more courses on. We've made the courses bigger. Well, how about we run some experience days? Just come for a day. Or if you've done a course before, come and do a refresher course with us. And we'll be launching those later this year as well. So if you can't get on the full course, come and do an experience day with us. And one of the things that we've been able to do through ATACC now, with the position we're in, all the experience we've got, the machine that's behind it, is to help others. If you've got an idea for a crazy course that no one will support you with or no one will help you with, come and talk to us. We're an open door, and we've helped lots and lots of others develop courses, and we still do that. We love that. It's what we're all about. So we're now in a position, we can't offer you millions of pounds, but we can certainly offer you the machine that we've talked about to help you set up and run a course.
A thought to leave you with then. Mark hates surprises. And it just so happens that his birthday almost always falls on an ATACC course weekend. So what do? There he is, in the middle of his lecture on trauma-induced coagulopathy. A load of Muppety instructors jump up, pull out some bunting, put a silly hat on his head, play a little video and play a song to make everybody laugh, and give him a massive "It's My Birthday" badge that he had to wear for the rest. Did you enjoy that? He hates it. He hates it. And we do it every time. It's your 60th soon, isn't it? 25th, sorry, 25th.
God help me.
It's going to be good. And the reason I'm showing you that is because don't take yourself too seriously. We don't. We think what we do is serious. We think what we are helping people to achieve is a serious business. But we don't take ourselves too seriously to achieve it. We are delighted to share what we do and help other people to develop and grow in these type of ways. Fundamentally, we love it. Every time we deliver a course, we are so enthused by the response from the candidates, from the faculty alike, and we go back off to our careers and our workplaces full of enthusiasm and reinvigorated to deliver as best we possibly can and to support others to do the same. So the final thought is, love what you do. We do, and that's how we've made this course. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? So I was just wondering, is it a pass-fail course, or is it what happens if someone doesn't succeed?
It's a really interesting question. And if someone fails, we failed. That's the way we take it. And that was quite hard initially because we used to get people who weren't necessarily as experienced as we get now. So you have to pass the MCQ exam or the single best answer exam. That's pass-fail, and you can reset that. On the other hand, in terms of the skills, this is where the mentoring comes in. We are watching you from the very first minute you arrive. We're monitoring you, we're observing your performance, your team interaction, and that's how we pick it up early. And if you're not hitting the mark, it'll get picked up in a faculty meeting, it'll go through the mentor, and it will be fed back into you and to develop you. And by doing that, we get very, very few fails for that reason.
I think a really fantastic achievement what you guys have made over the past quarter of a century. So, well, yeah. Well, you started when you were born, surely. Cool. Thank you very, very much. It was amazing.